Interested in, you also want to read the Veterans Day? Okay. Well, greetings, everyone. Thank you for being here for tonight's city council meeting. It's October 23rd, 2023. And we're first going to get started with a roll call.
Jessica Andrade, present. Ruth Cosby, here. Diane Crocker, here. Matt Lehman,
Here.
Christopher McMorrin,
Here, sort of.
Teresa Nielsen, here. And Catherine.
I am here. Well, thank you all. Appreciate that. Before we get started with some of our business tonight, we're going to we have a couple of proclamations. One is City of Philomath Resolution 23-26 in memoriam of former Mayor Jeannine Gay. And it is signed City Council, so we get a motion to approve this, and then I can go ahead and read it.
So moved.
So we have a motion made by Councilor Causey, seconded by Councilor Andrade. Thank you. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Christopher? All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. Okay, I think that passed unanimously. So I'm going to go ahead and read that. And again, so whereas the city expresses its sorrow at the passing of past Mayor Jeannine Gay on September 26, 2023. And whereas past Mayor Gay made a significant impact on the lives of many in Philomath through the service that she rendered to this community in the following elected and appointed positions. Mayor of Philomath, 1988 to 1990. City Councilor, 1985 to 1988. And 1993, 1994, and 2001 to 2002. Planning Commissioner from 1997 to 1998. And from 2007 to 2010. And from 2016 to 2020. And a Budget Committee member from 2003 to 2008. In addition, the following city subcommittees and appointments. She filled Finance and Admin, Public Works, Police Committee, Ordinance Committee, Streets and Parks, Corvallis Benton County Economic Development Partnership, Willamette Criminal Justice Council. And whereas the creation of the Philomath Urban Renewal District in 1990 was a major project that she took pride in being involved within. Now, therefore, it be resolved that past Mayor Gay will indeed be missed by all who had the privilege of knowing her, and be it further resolved that this resolution of gratitude in memoriam became a part of a city council meeting, and a copy had to be sent of the family or to the family of past Mayor Gay, passed by the city council this 23rd of October 2023, and approved by myself today. So, in honor of Jeannine or Mayor Gay, I'd like to please just take a moment of silence. Think of the contributions that she made to our city and our community. Yes. And note there's a couple of photos of our past mayors that included Ms. Gay on the backside of that resolution. Next, we have the City of Philomath Resolution 23-27, a Veterans Day proclamation, which we passed during our last council meeting. Councilor Lehman has volunteered to read that proclamation.
Yes, this is the Veterans Day proclamation. Whereas this Veterans Day commemorates the 105th anniversary of the end of World War I. And whereas the federal holiday honors the men and women who have fought to sustain our democracy. And whereas the courage, honor, sacrifice, and dedication that our veterans have shown in the name of freedom and democracy are worthy of recognition. And whereas Americans owe a great debt to all people who have bravely served in defense of this nation. And whereas military service has resulted in permanent injury or death for many veterans whose spirit remains in the continued preservation of our freedoms. And whereas we affirm our duty as citizens to express our gratitude both in words and in actions for the service of our veterans. And whereas Philomath has many veterans within our community who have served our country with distinction and honor, now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Philomath that November 11th, 2023 is recognized as Veterans Day and proclaims its gratitude for all veterans. Be it further resolved, the council encourages all residents to honor the valor and sacrifice of our veterans, thank the veterans in their lives, and to take a few moments to learn more about the sacrifices made by our veterans. Passed by the City Council this 23rd day of October, approved by the mayor this 23rd day of October, 2023.
Thank you very much, Council Lehman. Appreciate that. So tonight, in addition to these two proclamations, we're also going to be discussing. I had a question. Did we pass that the last meeting? Didn't we? We didn't. Okay, sorry. Do I have a motion to approve this?
I'll second.
So I apologize for my confusion. So that the motion to approve by Councilor Causey, seconded by Councilor Lehman. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. I think I heard Councilor Lane or McMorrin, so motion carries unanimously.
I didn't actually, I dropped out for a second and came back in right as we were voting, so I wasn't sure what the motion was.
Okay, so you just abstained, but it was about the
Yes.
proclamation.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so one abstention. Thank you, Councilor McMorrin.
Thank you.
So on tonight's business, I'm just going to summarize briefly. We're going to talk about the proposals for city attorney services. We're also going to discuss the social service grant recommendations and the grant recommendations for transient lodging tax. And then we are going to pull from the agenda the ordinance 879. And then, yeah, we have our information correspondence and then adjourning. So I wanted to offer that. But first, we are going to talk about city attorney services proposals. And Chelsea, you're going to cover that?
I will cover that. So we have received 3 proposals to our requested proposals from 2 firms that primarily are offering city attorney services. One firm that was offering prosecutor services. We've listed out those firms and you have received the proposals. What we would like to do tonight is look through the guidelines for moving forward with the process and the dates. And see if we can get a consensus from council on several things, one of which would be a topic for the firms to do a short 4-minute or less presentation on, just to give you something to hear them speak about that's a similar topic. And that was a recommendation by council. And then to choose if you do want to see all 3 of the firms to come and do an interview process on the 30th. And that's where we're at. Any questions?
Go ahead, Councilor Lehman.
Did we expect to get more responses than 3? Or is that seem okay?
Well, you get what you get. I think city manager was thinking maybe we'd get 5 or 6. I was thinking maybe you'd get 5 So it's a shorter list than maybe we expected. I was just at the city attorney government law conference on Friday, and I think statewide, there's kind of an issue with attorneys who are willing to do this work at all. So it's fewer than we would have expected or liked, and you don't have much local, which is also, I think, a little distressing.
Sounds like an opportunity.
Yeah, it is.
We did have a relatively short timeline, but we thought it was gonna be sufficient to get it noticed and get people to apply. So Counselor Crocker?
I'm a little concerned on the timeline. We're supposed to have these proposals done by Sunday, and Monday we're interviewing. So are you really going to get these on Sunday and deal with them? Or should we move that back to Friday or something else?
So that was for the matrix, which is shown as attachment 2. So yes, the matrix is pretty straightforward. Once we get them, we can just calculate everyone's numbers together. It doesn't take very much time, that part of the process. And that will give you those numbers when you're doing interviews, and then there's a separate criterion scoring for the interviews themselves.
So, the results of that does not depend on who we're interviewing. We're deciding that tonight.
If you decide that tonight, if you want to change the process, we absolutely can, if you're not comfortable with it as a body. But with only 3 firms, we didn't make a formal staff recommendation, but it does seem like maybe we have time to interview all 3 firms.
Counselor Andrade?
Do we require a motion?
We do, there's a recommended motion.
Oh, thank you. I move that the following firms be invited to interview at the October 30th meeting. Table Heston, Beery, Elsner, and Hammond, Ivers, Miller, and Mazhari Clark.
Thank you. We have a motion. Motion, do we have a second? A motion made by Counselor Andrade and seconded by Counselor Causey. Any further discussion?
So just a couple of things. One is, it may not be possible to schedule anyone from any of those firms on that short of a basis. So that's an invitation, but it may not be that meeting because you may not have people who can do that. And the second thing would be, you might have some who would say, well, how about we do this remotely? And I think that's just up to the council, whether you think that's a good idea or not. That's,
I will say that I did ask all of the firms to pencil that date in, and I didn't hear from any of them that they wouldn't be able to, but I don't know that if they thought it might be a remote option too, but they did say that they had penciled in the date.
It does seem to me that it would be nice to have them in person at this time. We're not paying them yet. And might as well get them
clearly,
here.
yeah, get them for free.
Might as well get them here and see if we can, sometimes people present differently virtually than in person. I think I would prefer in person if you had the opportunity.
I concur. Yeah, I do have a question about that. Since none of the firms are local, are we anticipating requiring them to be in person at most meetings or events, or just available by Zoom?
I think you've got a series of things that you can negotiate as you get to the contract stage. And so, that again gives you an opportunity to say, well, this is operationally how we'd like things to go, and see what cost difference there is for you.
I would also recommend that if someone doesn't ask that as a question, that we could ask that as a question just to all of the firms. What is their availability if we were to go forward with them and do contract negotiations? Are they willing to negotiate that?
And then each of them did say that they would be available for being in person. If that's what we ask.
I'm sure that they would be happy to charge us that.
And
$85 an hour.
and both of them change, one
addressed that travel cost, and the other one, I didn't know.
Both of them two
The
to,
cost of travel?
one said it'd be available at a discounted rate.
Okay.
And then the other thing that I was just going to mention is, that I think if we knew how much our current services were paying and we could figure out, well, what's the equivalent number of hours that we would get with this new service, that might be helpful for just for a comparison for us to know. If we can only afford 10 hours of their time, because you've been charging us so little.
It's kind of like that.
Well,
I think it's 20 hours, but yeah.
worth having a conversation about.
Okay.
Any?
So it's understanding it's about $1,000 each time just for travel for them to come here. Consideration.
Plus 285 per hour while they're here
Certainly.
Well,
for the one service.
and I don't know that we know for the city prosecutor if it's travel time from Albany to here.
Mhm.
So I think that's another question that you would want to ask.
Luckily, Albany's not that
That's
far.
twice a month and,
Yeah.
I think if we're letting people testify by Zoom, that we should let people be prosecuted by Zoom too.
But not, I mean, we can have that conversation as we start to negotiate, but any further discussions about the process of what we want to do?
I have a quick question.
Chris, Counselor McMorrin, one moment, Counselor Causey is gonna ask a question, I'll come back to you.
Sure.
Thank you. With respect to prosecutorial services, does the judge have any input on the selection or no?
that's entirely up to you. What I would say is it's your hiring, not the judges. And there's a little, we want to be a little careful about the relationships between the judge, the prosecutor, and defense attorneys, so that they're all, arm's length. I don't think there's any particular issue with the one firm that's applied. I think if you ask the judge, he would say Catherine does a good job, and Dan Miller did a good job. So
I think I was thinking specifically of whether or not Catherine was the person.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Preference.
Yeah, that would be entirely up to the court.
Thank you.
Counselor McMorrin, you had a question?
I was just wondering what we're thinking, and I apologize if I missed this, but what we're thinking for the term of this contract? Is this a fixed term, or is this just sort of a perpetual agreement? How long are we agreeing to work with these folks for?
And that's entirely up to us, and we can talk about that during negotiations with the firms that we choose to interview or choose to work with.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss if we had some plan for that. So that sounds good. Thank you.
What do you recommend?
I honestly don't know. What I will say is the contract that we had with the city was so old, based on something from the 80s, that it had a lot of gaps in it. It didn't have a term on it specifically, but it seemed to be, whatever the council wanted to do. And it also didn't have, increases and some other things, so it worked out a couple of different ways.
And then you had mentioned one thing during your introduction about that in my mind, I was like, oh yeah, we can ask Counselor Brewer about that in a few seconds.
The topics perhaps,
Oh,
but do you want to finish the?
Okay.
Motion?
Sure.
I put two motions that are related to both of them.
and so any further questions about the process for interviewing? No. All in favor, please raise your hand, say aye. Aye.
I,
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next, there is a motion about a topic to be provided to firms to present about. And Jim, did you have some thoughts on that?
I do have some thoughts. My thought would be to pick one of the, either a topic that the city knows this is going to be coming up for us directly. And statewide, effective January 1st, I think there's a change in the public meetings law where it will now be enforceable by the Ethics Commission. And it is an ethical violation to violate the public meetings law, and that's personal. That might be a great one to have a firm visit with you about. And homelessness topics are very big statewide. They're not a huge issue in Philomath, but you might like to hear an applicant's thoughts on that. And then the last one might be public procurement. And, you know, what should we be looking for as those rules change? That seems a little drier.
And what do you think about the idea of land use, some sort of land use issue?
I think 4 minutes is so short to talk about. I don't even know that you could get to the initial process for land use in 4 minutes, where I think you might get a feel for how people would advise you on the statutory change in public meetings law, for example. And you might get some feeling for the state law on reasonable time, place, manner restrictions on resting. You might have some other topic that you think, oh, this is going to hit our city fast, and that, you know, might be regulatory for water or sewer, or, you know, one of those things. But those were the ones that I thought of offhand.
My only concern about doing housing, or sorry, homelessness, is that I would hate to give the public an impression that, oh, we're thinking about changing something and
Yeah.
make them, you know what I mean? Like sometimes rumor mills get started.
But in trying to be so transparent as a city, and trying to be up to date and current about procedures, I kind of like the changes and how that, and the public meeting law about how that affect our city and what we should be aware of, things we should be aware of.
I mean, I think that my thought is it's less about in-depth legal advice and more about how they would present something in kind of a public setting, and that's.
Councilor Andrade?
Councilor McMorrin has one.
Thank you.
please.
Councilor McMorrin?
I think Jim might just answer the question a little bit with the statement that more, but I was wondering if it's appropriate for Jim to like be involved, like to be there for these, just since none of us are lawyers. Like, you know, it would be hard for me to know if someone gave a presentation what I'm looking like. I mean, I can tell if they're like good at talking, but I guess, you know, it's hard for me to judge if they're giving good legal advice or not in this sort of example presentation. So I didn't know if that's something that that our current counsel could then, you know, give us his thoughts on, or if that's appropriate.
I can always give you what my opinion is. And
Awesome.
it's worth what it's worth, you know.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
that
you.
question. Councilor Andrade?
I move that the following topic be provided to firms to present on public meeting laws and the changes coming up.
Then any further discussion? One thing I might add is, might we amend it just to reference and the impact and the impact it might have on Philomath, which is something that Councilor Nielsen had mentioned.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would like to add that into my motion.
It might have on Philomath.
And And is that approved by the second?
Yes. However much, like wherever it needs to fit.
No, too.
Great. So we have a motion and seconded, Andrade and Counselor Causey. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Great.
Nice.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay.
So I just wanted to make sure that everyone did notice that there is a matrix. And then if you have questions, we're trying to keep it maximum of 2. If you really have 3 that are burning, send them my way, and then I'll work with Jim to compile an interview style that we can hand out and make sure that we're asking everyone equally. And then I will send out this topic to the firms and invite them to the meeting.
So do you want us to send our completed matrix to you?
Yes, send it to me by, I think I have the 29th.
So the matrix and 2
And any
questions.
questions that you would want us to ask them.
And as prompts on those, some of the issues that raised over the years, as a counselor layman, I think, oh, you might want to ask a question about home rule. As you, you may want to have questions on diversity, equity, inclusion. You may want to have questions on public procurement, anything that again are kind of questions that you would expect somebody to be able to give you some information about. And the idea is really to give them prompts to talk to you about stuff, but to also keep it uniform enough that you're doing an apples to apples comparison and not a apples to rocks.
And I see Counselor McMorrin's hand is up.
My last question was just about, if I'm understanding this correctly, there's one firm that applied to be the prosecutor and 2 firms that applied to do general city attorney work. Is this test more appropriate for the firms that applied to do city attorney work? Because I guess like the, sort of advising us on public meetings law isn't really something that the city prosecutor firm would do. So I guess I was just curious about that.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Okay. So I guess do we still want all 3 of them to do it, or do we want there to be something different for the city prosecutor, or are we just kind of doing this as like a litmus test?
I think you might want to ask the city prosecutors to present on something different.
Okay.
You have a suggestion for that, Jim?
Always a fun question to ask how they balance the economic impact on the city and fairness to a defendant. I have no idea what a good answer would be.
It's a very good question.
Yeah.
I have a question that I always understood. Go ahead, Counselor Causey, while I think about my question.
Should we ask anything about contract disputes and performance and contract with the reservoir in mind, or should we steer clear of that?
I think it would be appropriate to ask a question about what's your experience with construction contracts, construction defects. Of course, might want to ask a question about people's experience with the contracts for speed cameras or red light cameras. I think both firms would be able to tell you something about their experiences with this.
Could that, Could that also secondary, could that be like, we talk about the litigation in regards to construction contracts, so that we know what kind of litigation
Yeah.
we have on those types of things, right?
Yes.
One thing I get a little bit nervous about on that topic is remembering exactly what has been discussed in executive session versus what has not.
Well, we're asking them to tell us about their experience,
but-
which wouldn't be on this
Yeah,
issue.
I just get nervous about us then
Got it.
talking out about what, talking about related
Yeah.
things.
Again, what I would say is this is gonna be their opportunity to tell you what they have experience and knowledge about. Less for us to say, hey, we got this issue, and you might have noticed that there's a break between the. Excuse me, I'm just waving the blighted way.
Yeah.
I must be starting to smell too on top. We've got a dispute with ODOT about, the height of the ADA ramps, along the highway, and, I don't know that I would get into that kind of stuff at all. I'd ask them what their experience has been litigating construction, contract disputes.
And then, the question I was going to ask is. Will we be interviewing these folks in the presence of the other folks that are present? Or are they gonna be one at a time in the room, out of the room, in the room, out of the room?
Well, it will be in a public meeting forum.
And so we can kind of ask them what.
We
they'd
can
like
ask
to do.
them, we can always give them a space to be,
Yeah.
if they would like to.
The reason I ask is less so about the public meeting forum, but of the fact that. First person will have the privilege of hearing the second person's, or the second person.
Before our meeting started, I was talking about, I made a proposal at a city that had, I think, 4 or 5 attorneys all making proposals. We all sat in the room while each one was interviewed, and there was some of that. Hey, yeah, that was a pretty good, if you were the third person, I hear a couple of those, and I kind of look at the last person and think, well, I agree with A and B out of this, but
Yeah,
again, I don't know that it would be the topic as much as, I don't know, kind of their public speaking style. Your comfort with them.
Counselor Causey.
I would recommend we interview them independently. Much more comfortable for the candidates.
I think I would prefer that as well.
I think we could also perhaps schedule them a little bit, like you
Stagger.
would, when employee interviews, stagger them a little bit, so. There are 3 of them. I don't know how long you want to spend with each of them.
And maybe put the municipal prosecutor in between the other 2.
There you go, just to kind of.
And that we've got a buffer in there.
Palate cleanser.
Yeah, yes, well done. And I don't know, flip a coin or something to decide who goes first. So that's randomized.
Do we think a half an? Well, how much time for each? Not half an hour, because we're gonna be asking how many for?
It kind of, I think, depends a little bit on the questions, what we get in, there may be duplicates, when you do. You've done interviews, other people have done interviews, even with an employee. I would say you can do a 45-minute interview if you stick to maybe 8 questions or less.
But 2 questions apiece, 7 people, there's 14.
Right, so I think the 2 questions, when I talked to Jim about it, was submit them, but we're probably going to have to consolidate them. And I can work with Jim because he really is more of the authority on this, and he can help select questions that
That are not unlawful.
not unlawful, that will hopefully
Yeah.
get you the answers that you're looking for from the firms.
That's not reasonable, everybody?
We could put in 1 or 2 unlawful ones just to see
If
you
they
get
call
it.
us out on it?
Yeah.
That's the whole interview. Say no to any of these questions, so you're out.
Did we approve the question for the prosecutor, the presentation topic?
We did.
The
Did we vote?
second one, no, you did not
Did
vote.
we
vote
did
on
we
the
vote
second
on
I can repeat what Jim had said. How does the firm balance the economic impact on the city and fairness to the defendant?
I move that we approve that as a topic for our prosecutor.
Second,
Okay, any further discussion? The only thing I'll mention is that that same question then should be asked of all three firms, because the other two firms are also applying for prosecutorial services as well, right?
At least to some degree, yeah. They're not, I think that. Barry Ellesmere and Hannah said they would do like code enforcement, but not municipal court, traffic and criminal things.
Okay.
And I'm trying to remember what Cable Houston said.
Contract.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
what
both
you
of them
have
said they
essentially-
help
Got it.
you.
Right. You have one firm that can provide, I think, all of those services. And then you have two other firms that could help
One or
or
the other.
piece off a little bit, but not fully provide.
Okay. We will arrange the questions to be appropriate for the service.
Right, no, we're questioning
Okay.
on that.
Sounds good. So, any further discussion? Counselor Crocker?
Hiring more than one firm is to cover all of our bases then?
Oh. Sorry.
So we're gonna need prosecutorial services and city attorney services, and so we may end up with multiple firms.
Last question is a time for the start time for the meeting on the 30th. What time would you all, if you could vote on it?
Sure.
or Come to a consensus. about
What day of the
that.
week is that? It's Monday?
It's a Monday.
They
Next
must come
Monday.
in costume. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I love that, yeah.
Festively.
What's
Be
the
dressed as
earliest
lawyers.
that work for?
Six.
Is 6 o'clock? Okay with everyone? Okay, looks like so. Councilor McMorrin, 6 o'clock work for you on next Monday?
I think so. I can't have my calendar right now, but as far as I'm aware, yes.
Okay, thank you. So we'll plan on 6 o'clock. And then are we aiming for 45 minutes with each firm?
Yeah, we'll try for that. We'll schedule something like that.
Okay. That's all we have there.
Did we vote on the?
Question. All in favor of passing the motion as stated, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next, we're going to be discussing the social service and then transient lodging tax grant recommendations. Sorry, go ahead.
I might have done some math wrong. Are we okay starting at 7 or is still the?
So revisiting the time, are you not available until 7?
Yeah, my flight doesn't get in until like 5.
So if we do 7 at 45 minutes with shifting in between, we will have to keep really on time so that and that would be a late.
The other thing would be I could zoom in. Or
Are
phone
you
call it.
okay with that?
I could do that.
Are you okay with that? Okay, we'll stick with.
So we'll stick with 6 and you'll plan on zooming in.
On the car, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So I'll go ahead and take the lead on this, the Finance and Admin Committee. Discussed and made a recommendation for social service funding. We had a total of 7, we had a total of 6, right? 6 applications, down from what we had the previous year where we had 8. And we had a total of $25,000, right? That we $38,602 that we divvied up amongst the different candidates. And just as a reminder, the social service agency funding is really intended for nonprofit organizations that provide some sort of a service within, to the city of Philomath or within the city of Philomath's boundaries. And then in the second part of that meeting, we then discussed the utility assistance funding, which we only had 2 applicants, including Vina Moses and We Care. And that funding is specifically intended to provide utility assistance within the city limits of Paloma to some of our more needy residents. So first then as a summary, for utility services, we had a total of 10,350. And then we had transient lodging collection or taxes. And we had 3 applications for funding from the transient lodging tax. The amount of funding that we had available was $2,500. That has been allocated to the city for that purpose. So we have recommended motion, and so the Finance and Admin Committee had a conversation, it was a rich conversation, made some recommendations to the council, which you all have the ability to make alternative recommendations. But we made recommendations here, and we have separate motions for each of those topic areas. So that is my summary, and if you have any questions, I see Councilor Memoriam has his hand up. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. That is not
I think-
more. That is Chris, City Manager Chris Workman. Sorry, I was assuming that was Councilor Memoriam. Chris,
No worries.
I just wanted to pause to make sure that anybody on this council that needed to recuse himself from the conversation could do that real quick.
Councilor,
I need to recuse myself
okay,
from this conversation, for my wife works for one of the agencies that applied.
got it. Are there any other?
Is there, or is this a single motion, or is there one particular one?
The first,
The social
Okay,
service
good.
agencies.
Okay. Do you,
Can I just say, it's not a legal conflict of interest, but I am on the board of Strengthening Rural Families. I do not receive any compensation from that.
sure, appreciate that clarification and and declaration. Does anyone else have potential conflicts of interest? Go ahead, Councilor.
Oh, as liaison, do I have to, okay.
That you're a liaison for,
For Paloma Community Services,
just good to
right?
keep on the table what everybody's potential biases are.
I'm the liaison for PYAC.
And then I'm the liaison for the chamber.
All leave the room.
Potential,
Conflicts at all, then,
Okay.
and
Okay,
just worth noting.
Okay.
It's good to know. So, okay, so we do have one conflict of interest, with Council Lehman. Thank you. So that being said, were there any questions that anyone has?
Yes, I have a question. And I apologize. I'm kind of a type 1, and I know that I've opposed this in the past, but there are times when we exceed the requested amount, which in this case is true with Vina Moses and We Care, even though it's not a lot of money, it's a total of $350. Unless we are obligated to spend this, I would prefer that it be carried over to future years. Is that possible, Mike?
Anything's possible. I'm gonna come up
If
with
it's possible.
So right now, the Finance and Admin Committee recommended $5,000 for each of those 2 agencies, meaning Vina Moses and We Care. And Councilor Causey pointed out that they only requested 5,000 each, so that each were recommended to receive an additional 175 above what they had asked for. It's a good point. Why don't we just, for right now, we can talk about utility assistance funding. Yeah. Appreciate that. We'll focus on this one.
You can carry that forward if you want. If the count for $350, I'll figure out something, so.
Council Nielsen.
In today's economy, with the rising costs of food and rent and other things, I feel strongly that we should give all, I mean, if we have the funds and we can allocate them without making a difference for our budget, I would like to add the additional 175 because I think we have a lot of people that are in financial crisis. I think there's going to be an increasing need for help with utilities and with food and housing, whatever way we can do as a city. I propose that we do it.
Yeah, they're two of the most used organizations that the city uses. They use it all. You haven't asked for an accounting, but it's been well used.
Thank you. So first we have Councilor Andrade and then Councilor McMorrin following.
I normally would have the same sentiment, but because it's utility assistance as opposed to like the transient lodging tax or something like that, and because we are in an especially larger financial crisis, and also from what I understand, the money is just coming right back to us. So it seems to make more sense to just give it all away for at least this pot of money, because we're just gonna get it back anyway. And then we end up helping more people or helping the same people to a larger extent.
Thank you. Any additional comments there? I think he had a different question, but I'll just. Councilor McMorrin, did you want to address this comment on the same thing? If not, hold off for 1 second.
Well, I feel like I just echo what everyone else said, so I don't really say it, because I wanted to be sympathetic, Councilor Kazi, because I also am sometimes I get very into systems and the way things should work. But I also agree that just because this is for utility assistance, like it's not like they applied for a specific project that costs a specific amount. Like, you know, it's sort of it's a liquid, it can fill whatever container it's put in. So
Thank you. I think you're breaking up a little bit, but I think we got that. Any further discussion? Councilor Nielsen?
Okay, I move to approve allocation of the utility assistance funds as follows: 5,175 to Vina Moses, 5,175 to We Care, for a total of 10,350.
So we have a motion on the table motion made by Councilor Nielsen, second by Councilor Crocker. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
I
Okay, motion carries unanimously. Next, let's go ahead and talk about, let's go out of order here and talk about transient lodging tax. The Finance and Admin Committee basically recommended splitting it evenly amongst the three applicants between the Frolic, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Benton County Historical Society, with an extra $1 being given to the Historical Society because they were listed first. Councilor Kazi.
I move to approve allocation of the transient lodging tax as follows: Benton County Historical Society, $834. Willamette Chamber of Commerce, $833. And Willamette Frolic and Rodeo, $833, for a total of $2,500.
Thank you. We have a motion made by Councilor Kazi and seconded by Councilor Andrade. Any further discussion? Councilor Lehman.
Do we know what these folks are gonna do with this funding, and will the level of funding allow any of these organizations to accomplish this task? Or
They all had specific projects that they want to contribute to, but I believe that they asked for $1,000 because they were hoping for $1,000 to finish the project. So this was get them all partially there, but not actually completely there.
and was the Chamber of Commerce one some kind of a map?
Chamber of Commerce one was actually a weatherproof display for the materials outside of the museum.
Awesome.
Any further questions? All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Next, we have the Social Service Agency funding, which is a much more rich and involved conversation for the Finance and Admin Committee. And welcome to accept motions and have conversation. Councilor Posey.
I move to approve allocation of the social service agency's funding as follows. ABC House, $5,000. Benton Habitat for Humanity, $8,000. Maxtivity, $4,800. Philomath Community Services, $11,000. PYAC, $4,901. Strengthening Rural Families, $4,901, for a total of $38,602.
So we have a motion made by Councilor Crossley and seconded by Councilor Nielsen. Any further discussion? Councilor Crossley.
I guess just a general question as to why you chose to reduce the amounts for PYAC and strengthening rural families. I guess how you prioritize this.
I can just talk about the process that we went through, if that's helpful. So, first of all, the Finance and Admin Committee noticed or recognized that Philomath Community Services was asking for the repair of a failing freezer, which seemed like a capital project that was somewhat of a strong need. And so, but then they didn't want to fund the entirety of it, so they recommended $11,000. So that was the first cut. And then that left us with a certain dollar amount. The next thing that we discussed was then we discussed dividing it kind of somewhat evenly with some nuance there, but then there was discussion of the importance of local housing. And so then they voted to not give the full amount to Benton Habitat for Humanity because that was a lot of money, but there was a recommendation for $8,000 and we went ahead and went with that. That left us with a certain dollar amount. We then noted that the average left between the rest of the organizations, if we averaged it over each of them, was greater than the $5,000 and the $4,800 that was requested by ABC House and by Maxtivity. So we just recommended funding them fully. And then we had a certain dollar amount left over. And we divided that equally amongst PYAC and Strengthening Rural Families.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Councilor McMorrin, I saw your hand up.
I think that was a mistake.
I'm sorry, that's not, you are not Councilor McMorrin, you are Christopher Workman.
We put both Chris's on the board to confuse you, Mayor. Sorry about that. I appreciate the process the Finance Committee's gone through, the City Council's gone through. I just would make one recommendation for consideration, just having been through this process over the last 10 years. And again, it's just for consideration. Benton Habitat for Humanity is a great organization. But you know, these dollar amounts are limited. And right now they've got a couple of houses they're working on, really one house that's under construction in Philomath that's going to service one new family. And as much as I'm excited about one new family to come into town, I'm concerned about such a large dollar amount going to Benton Habitat for Humanity at really the expense of Philomath Youth Activities Club. Getting quite the direction. I think this is the lowest amount that I've ever seen go towards Philomath Youth Activities Club, which obviously serves a large number of children with sports, after school care, summer care, et cetera, et cetera. So if the council would consider a change, a reduction of, you know, even $2,000 from Benton Habitat for Humanity to go towards PYAC, you know, $2,000, even $3,000, I think would still give a considerable donation to Habitat for Humanity and be able to get PYAC the funds that they really do rely on the city for to help with after school programs for youth. So just for consideration.
Thank you, Chris, appreciate that. Anybody have a thought? I'll mention, I had a similar thought of, and I voiced it during the Finance and Admin Committee that I felt a little bit like Habitat for Humanity is a great organization, but it is only benefiting the one family, and they are building this one house, and it's I just kind of stare at the house as in the foundation and just the lot out my window every day. And I noted that, this house has been taken 2.5 years, I believe, now since they started it, and last year we gave them funds to go towards their SDCs. And this year, they just started building walls about 2 weeks ago, and so happy to see it moving forward, but it also sat empty for not doing anything for like 5 or 6 months. So it's a really slow process to help a single family, and so I have some concerns about that. I think that PYAC and Strengthening Rural Families, I could see that both of them could utilize some of the additional funds that could come from Habitat for Humanity. So that's something I was noting. Actually, I'll just make a motion to amend the recommendation to lower Habitat for Humanity down to $5,000, and then to split that $3,000 between PYAC and Strengthening Rural Families. I'll just make that motion.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Oh,
You're.
I thought you were. I'm like, wait a minute.
So I don't have a second on that, so that fails.
And can I make a comment? I think we had the financials may I not allowed to say that? That we had the financials on these,
Financial package.
we had a financial package on each organization. And I know I will speak for myself. I took into account, I looked over the financials for each nonprofit and tried my best to make an accounting of where the funds could be used effectively and where funds were most needed. And I still stand behind the decision that I made that day in allocating the funds as we did, based on the information that I researched and the information provided to us in our packets. It is correct that Habitat for Humanity has been in a multiple house development, correct? Not just one home in 2.5 years, but multiple.
Now there's
houses.
3 homes.
Yes, 3
Or
homes.
2 and a bit.
Yes, and I would like to see that I put my money where my mouth is when I talk about housing being important to all people, and not just those who have the financial wherewithal to have their own or have a home housing available to them. So I would like to stand behind what we decided.
And Councilor Andrade?
And I just wanted to bring up another point that you had made in the meeting, Councilor Nielsen, which was that it might be just one family. And also it's everyone who who individual members of the family who they touch and everything like that. So it's another thing to consider.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of allocating the funds as suggested by motion, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Christopher, it was dropped out of the.
Okay.
just coming back in the room.
Okay,
So there was no second for your motion?
not for mine, no. Motion then, so Christopher abstains because he's no longer in the meeting, so then motion carries unanimously. With 1 abstention, or two abstentions, yeah, 5-0. Okay. Excellent. Well, I think, honestly, I'm really happy that we were able to offer these funds. I know that we as a city is privileged to be able to do such a thing, and I'm certain that every organization that's receiving funds are very, very thankful for them. And yeah, and I'm just glad that we're able to do that. So we have also pulled E1 from the agenda, and then we have just the information correspondence.
May I ask why you're pulling that item?
She told me to.
Yes, there was a correspondence requested, by Pioneer that's still pending, so we don't feel comfortable moving.
Late in the week
Forward,
last week.
wait.
so.
Thank you.
So that'll come back to us.
Oh, I hope so.
But it will.
Well, with that, I think we can go ahead and adjourn the meeting.
Could I make
Oh,
one comment?
It's not adjourned yet.
This is off topic entirely, but it's something that I need to do for my office and our staff. So last Friday was the city attorney and government law section annual meeting and CLE, which is continuing legal education thing, and the business meetings. Our office was recognized for our contributions to this area of the law and to our profession. And it's because our staff and Dave Coulombe and the other lawyers who work for us are really, really good at what they do. And yeah.
Doubling the rates.
Yeah, well, yeah, as of tonight.
As of
Yeah.
April 2nd.
Yes.
Parker?
I got two. During the police committee, we discussed doing trunk or treat as a city council. And to my knowledge, there's no big decision. I went and bought candy for it because I said I would. I can pass it out to somebody else, but are we going to do that or not?
I did email Chris asking if that was going to be, and I hadn't heard back.
I did too.
He's been a little down and out, so I'm sure that he's trying to catch up on his.
So I think I would suggest that maybe it's not the entire council, but certainly people from the council can do that.
Don't discuss city business while you're
Right.
handing out candy.
But do we have to contact the chamber to let them know we're coming? Do we have to bring a table or a cover? I mean, I don't know. Has anybody done it before?
I asked,
Staff will take care of,
Yeah.
with the chamber director.
We can check the chamber. They have changed a little bit this weekend of check.
I handed out candy last year and it involved me pulling up with my vehicle and handing out candy on my trunk.
It'll be a balmy 35.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
You do. Okay. And I said I had to. The other one is the evaluation for Chris is due soon. And I don't know where to get it or.
I talked with them today. Chris, you there?
Yes, so
Yeah.
he can update you.
Can you speak? Are you hoarse?
No, I can speak, thanks. Yeah, I got a good start on my eval. I would have liked to have got it done last week and didn't. I don't know if it got, anyway, I've got a good start on it today. I'll probably finish it tomorrow. I'll send my self eval out tomorrow and include with that, either Chelsea or Ruth will send a link to the survey itself as well as my self eval. So look for that tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Okay, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a great evening and we see you next week, Monday.